So, as per our syllabus, as we discussed in yesterday's class, Indian national movement and also some important incidents in the Indian national movement. So, today we are going to discuss about some of important constitutional development things which are based on the uh, administration made up by the British government to administer an Indian government and Indian state. So, as per them, British India, British India government. So, after independence only, we are calling as Government of India. Before that, it is called as British India government. So, up to 1947, India is under the rule of British Parliament only. So means in the name of British Crown, Britain Crown, which is Queen Elizabeth, on the name of Queen Elizabeth, entire administration has been made by the British Parliament. So here in our syllabus, we have some important acts are there, like 1909 Act, and also it is called it as Minto Marley reforms, and also we have 1919 Act. It is also called as Montague-Chelmsford reforms, and also we have Government of India Act 1935. It is actually 1935 Government of India Act is the important act for the entire our making of the Constitution of India. So most of the major uh, uh, items which are related to Indian Constitution has been taken from the Government of India Act 1935. So in today's class, we are going to discuss about the what are the provisions, what are the futures are there in these acts, 1909 Act, 1919 Act, and also 1935 Government of India Act. So these three important acts are there in our syllabus. So first we have to know about the 1909 Act. Before that, in 1906, Lord Marley, the Secretary of State for the Indian Affairs, announced that British government that his government wanted to introduce a new reforms in India. So because at that time there are many agitations, many protests are there in the name of Indian national movement to get independence from the British government. So many locals, means many Indian national leaders also fought against the entire British rule in India. So at the time, the British government wanted to change their administration system and also wanted to introduce many reforms in Indian administration for the favor of Indian people. So at the time, that government wanted to reforms many things in the Indian administration. So for that only, this 1909 Act has been introduced in India. So in which the locals were to be given more powers in legislative powers. Before that, before 1909 Act, there is no representation for the Indians in the legislative councils. Like we are having now assemblies and parliament is there now. At that time, there are many legislative councils are there in princely states, and also we have also legislative assemblies at that time. So at that time, there are only members are elected from the British nationals only. There is no representation for the Indian nationals. So at that time, before introduction of this 1909 Act in the Indian era, a committee was appointed by Government of India to propose scheme of reforms. So the committee has submitted a report, and after the approval of Lord Minto and Lord Marley, the Act of 1909 passed by the British Parliament. So this act of 1909 Act is commonly known as the Minto Marley reforms. So many features are there in this 1909 Act. And also, if we discuss about the structure, and also there is many constitutional developments are there before this 1909 Act, like many acts are there, uh, in the name of administration, British government has introduced many acts like Regulating Act 1773, and also Pitt's India Act 1784, and also the Act of 1786. And also there are charter acts also there at that time in 1793 and 1813 and 1833. So every 20 years they had made many acts. Every 20 years they have introduced one act for the Indian administrations. And also Charter Act of 1853. These acts are all are passed by the British Parliament. So followed by this acts, first war of Indian Independence Act, which is named as Sipai Mutiny in 1857, that what we called as first war of Indian independence. So the British Parliament adopted the Government of India Act 1858. By the British government took over the administration of India. So from that time, 1858 onwards, entire administration of India under the hands of the British Parliament. So if we discuss about this development of constitutionalism in India, the growth of introduction of this constitutionalism in India, particularly after this act of 1858 only. So from 1858 onwards, very large differences, large reforms has been made by the British Parliament. So many agitations are there. There is political dissatisfaction is there from the Indian people, and also many reforms wanted to introduce in the Indian context. So the reforms mainly considered for the inadequate and dissatisfaction of the demands of Indian people. They wanted to change many reforms in the name of administration. So it is true, all of the subsequent reforms and also subsequent acts are there now. For every 20 years they had made acts for the better administration. So by the these acts are passed by the British Parliament. So relating to India, so these Minto Marley reforms are the first footstep for the reforms introduced by the British Parliament. So this 1909 Act, this is also called as Indian Council Act 1909. So the British Parliament was introduced this act in 1909 with much expectation to secure its influence among the various Indian committees. So as we discussed, Lord Marley, the Secretary of State of India, pointed out the Act of 1909 opened to a new chapter in Indian constitutional reforms. So please mute yourself. Someone making noise. So if we discuss about main features of this act are, first one is the number of the members of the Legislative Council at the center was increased from 16 to 60. So before introduction of this act, there are less number of members from the Legislative Council from the Indian national. So that number has been increased from 16 to 60. And also there are number of members of the provisional legislatures was also increased. It was fixed as 50 in the provinces of Bengal, Madras, Bombay, and the rest of the provinces it was 30. So, and also the member of legislative councils both at the center and the provinces were to be of 4 categories. Means there are ex officio members, means the ex officio members completely nominated by the Governor General, and also there are some nominated official members also there. These members also nominated by the Governor General, and also they are belongs to the government officials only. And also there are nominated non-official members. These also nominated by the Governor General, but they are from outside of the government. So they not belongs to government officials. So, and also there are elected members also there from the different categories of Indian people. And also in the Indian era, first time there has been introduced the right of separate electorate was given to the Muslims. So in the name of religion, they have introduced the first time separate electorates for the Muslims and minorities. So on the basis of religion, they had introduced these type of separate electorate systems in India. So, and also at the center, official members were to form the majority, but in provinces, non-official members would be in majority at that time. So entire council at the center and also at the provinces, 2 Indians were nominated to the council of the Secretary of State for Indian Affairs. So actually here, the Governor General empowered to nominate 1 Indian member to his executive council. And also they have enlarged central legislative council and also provincial legislative council. Central legislative council now we can compare with the Indian Parliament, and also provincial legislative council we can compare with the state assemblies. So it also enlarged the scope of subjects to be debated in both central legislative council and also in the provincial legislative council. So first time, as we discussed, separate electorates introduced by this act. So communal reservation both for the Hindus and Muslims too. So however, the British government brought the act with the intention of rallying to its side the moderates and the Muslims. So but quite there are many controversies has been existed at the time of implementation of this act, but the discontentment of among the people reached new height, and the government has resorted to repressive measures. And also we are having another one act, that is the Act of 1919, and also we will call it as Montague-Chelmsford reforms. So here Edwin Montague, named British official, became Secretary of State for India in June 1917. So during the First World War, the Congress and the Muslim League both cooperated with the British government for the needed self-government. So we wanted, after the implementation of 1999 Act, we wanted to increase our representation in the administration. So we wanted a self-government, we wanted self-rule in India. So that's what they wanted. Many more reforms by introducing this 1919 Act. So Lord Chelmsford, the Viceroy of India, said that the creation of British India as an integral part of the British Empire with self-government was the goal of the British rule. So he expressed his views that the British government wanted to introduce self-government system, self-rule by the Indian nation. So in 1916, the Indian government sent its political recommendation to the Mr. Chamberlain, the Secretary for State of India for the Indians, who did not approve it. However, many leaders like in the same year, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Surendranath Banerjee, and also many members from Imperial Legislature presented their own memorandum of reforms regarding the self-rule in India. So, and also Gopalakrishna Gokhale also submitted his recommendations before his death in 1915, which were published in 1917. So the bill was introduced in the House of the Commons in the British Parliament in 1919, June 2nd, in the House of Lords on December 11, 1919. It passed on 18th December 1919. So it was signed by the King George V on 23rd December 1919. So in this act, we have many features and many important subjects are there in this act. So after the introduction of this act, there are many changes has been made in the Indian administration system. Montague aims for reforms which came into force in 1921. So they passed it on 1919, but that act is came into force in 1921. The sole purpose of the act, which is to ensure that Indians of their representation in the government. So as we discussed in 1909 Act also, we wanted to increase our representation in British government. And after that also, we are wanted to increase our representation and increase our participation in Indian administration system. So the act introduced many reforms at the central level as well as provincial levels of government. So if we discuss about what are the salient features of this act of 1919 Act, so there are many important subjects are there, like central government is the important aspect in this act, and also we have different categories also there in the government sector. So for these matters, which were the national importance related to more than one province were governed at central level. Like we are having both levels of the government, like central government is there in India, and also we are having state governments also for every individual state. So for the matters, those related to national importance, that all the matters are belongs to amend or create any act belongs to that items. So the complete authority belongs to the central government only. Like if we take an example of foreign affairs, home affairs, defense, international relations, communication, public debt, civil and criminal laws, and also some national integrity related issues also belongs to the central government only. So the central legislature was made more powerful and more representatives from the India. So if we discuss about executive system from this act, the act made Governor General as the chief executive authority for the India. So there had to be executive council of the Viceroy, and also there are 8 members, out of which were 3 were to be Indians. So out of 8 members in the executive council of the Viceroy, only there are 3 members are belong to the Indians. So the Governor General could restore cuts in grants, certify bills, and also he can reject that bills. So many reforms also there in the legislature system, and also first time there has been introduced bicameral legislature. So the act introduced bicameral legislature means both houses in a assembly or parliament. Like at that time, the lower house or central legislative assembly and the upper house or council of state. Like we are having at central level now, we are having Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. At state levels in the assembly, we are having legislative assembly, and also we are having legislative council. So this system, this bicameral system means both houses in a parliament or assembly system, which has been introduced from this act only, 1919 Act. So the legislators under the new reforms could now ask questions, supplementaries, pass adjournment motions, and vote a part of the budget. But 75% of the budget was still not votable. So there is no freedom to change the budget bills. After implementation of this act in the houses. So the legislature had virtually no control over the governor general and his executive council. So, and also there has been increased uh, members representation from the Indian people. So composition of, if we discuss about composition of lower house, the lower house would consist of 145 members. In that members, 41 nominated, 26 officials from the British section, and 15 non-official members. 104 members elected from the 52 general, 30 Muslims, 2 Sikhs, and 20 special category. So composition of upper house would have 60 members. It had a tenure of 5 years, and composition of lower house, it had tenure of 3 years only. So if we discuss about the powers of Viceroy, the legislature was addressed by the Viceroy, and also he could call for the meetings or adjourn the meetings or even repeal the legislature. So like Viceroy means now we can compare with our Honorable President of India for entire India. So like that, Viceroy acted like that only at that time. So if we discuss about this British Act of 1919, major principles which are the reforms were to be progressively carried out in India, and there are many other reforms also there. At that time, entire British Empire came here to implement their reforms in the name of this 1919 Act. So at that time, British India is remain as an integral part of the British Empire. So responsible government in British India is the objective of declared policy of Parliament. So in the implementation of this bicameral system, implementation of this public representation in the legislative councils at central level and provincial councils at the state levels has been increased. So the responsible government is capable of progressive realization only. So at that time, there are many developments also there in the Indian administration system. It provided independence to the provinces in provincial matters. So at that time, states has some independence in the making of policies towards their region. So the significance of this preamble of this 1919 Act was that what was already declared by the Montague as now given as a definite legal shape. So there are many changes in the central government, there are many changes in the provincial government, and also there are also many thinkers and many Indian national leaders also criticized this act, though a step was taken towards increasing association of Indians by raising their strength to 3 in a council of 8. So as we discussed in Viceroy's Executive Council, out of 8 members, only there is 3 members from the Indians. So that's what, there is no proper representation from the Indian government. So our leaders has been criticized this act. That act is not associated with the Indian people and also not supporting our self-rule and self-government system. So there was also much confusion in the division of the subjects too. So the Act of 1919 introduced only a responsive government, not responsible government. So at the center, no vote of confidence of the governor legislatures could return out of member of the Executive Council, and also the Governor General, and such as they were irresponsible. So the act introduced diarchy in the provinces. During this, its implementation, it proved to be failure because of the division of subjects was irrational and illogical. Moreover, the position of the ministers were weak and they had to serve 2 masters, the governor and also provincial legislative council at the same time. So the final crunch in the provinces were also put everything in the dark. So unfortunately, the Government of India Act 1919 was never given a cooperative trial. Right from the beginning, the Indian National Congress condemned it is disappointing and also unsatisfactory and launched non-violent, non-cooperation movement in 1920 for the attainment of Swaraj or self-rule. So with this time, within this time only, Indian National Congress has made many activities like non-cooperation movement and self rule, what we call it as at that time Lucknow Pact, 1916, and also non-violence. Gandhi also participated in many non-cooperative movements like Dandi March at that time, 1930. So, however, the first election of under the Act of 1919, which was held in 1920, diarchy functioned in all the provinces uninterruptedly from 1921 to 1937. So, except Bengal and Central Province when it tried to suspend during 1924 to 27 and also 24 to 26 respectively. So if we discuss about division of subjects, the subjects related to the administration has been divided into two categories. Two lists are there. One was reserved category, reserved items, and also second one is transferred. So in the reserved list under the which the subjects were to be administered by the governor through his executive council of bureaucrats. It included subjects such as law and order, finance, land revenue, irrigation, etc. So all important subjects were kept in the reserved subjects of the provincial executive. And also the transferred subjects were to be administered by the ministers nominated from among the elected members of the legislative council. So it included subjects such as education, health, local government, industry, agriculture, excise, etc., etc. there. So in case of failure of constitutional machinery in the province, the governor could take over the administration of transferred subjects also. Like we can compare it with the president rule at present time under the article of 356. So 356 president rule is there now. So at that time, the governor could take over the administration of the provinces. Now, state if fail in implementation of constitution or there is no majority or lapse of the government, the entire administration has been taken over by the central government in the name of president. So if we discuss about reforms in the legislature under this act, provincial legislative councils were further expanded and 70% of members were to be elected. So, and also like 1909 Act, here also the system of communal and class electorate was further consolidated. So women were also given the right to vote. Before that, there is no right to vote for the women in India. So the legislative council could reject the budget, but the governor could restore it if it is necessary. So the legislatures enjoyed freedom of speech. Before that, before 1919 Act, there is no freedom to express views on every act or every activity which is made in the legislative council. So from this act, 1919 Act, the legislatures enjoyed freedom of speech. So they can comment, they can criticize, they can suggest their views on this ongoing discussion or debates in the provincial councils or central legislative councils. So if we discuss about powers of the governor, from this act, the governor could overrule the ministers from this act on any grounds that he considered special. Also, he retained complete control over the finances. And also, the legislative councils could initiate legislation, but the governor's assent was required. And also, the governor has a special power. That is, the governor could veto bills and issue ordinances. So, if he wants to stop the bill, he can put them into hold on his hands. And also, if there is no house session is not running over there, he can issue ordinance for the temporary administration. So, if we discuss about the significance of the Act of 1919, awakening among Indians, Indians received secret information about administration and became aware of their duties. So, expansion of voting rights also, their election areas expanded in India, and people began to understand the importance of voting from this 1919 Act. And also, this instilled a sense of nationalism and awakening among Indians, and they moved towards achieving the goal of Swaraj. So, apart from this implementation of 1919 Act, the Indians are always protesting 1919 Act. So, always people are agitating against the British government. So, this act introduced self-government in provinces also. So, in provinces like what we compare with states now. So, self-government in provinces has been introduced from this 1919 Act. So, the Act gave the people the power of administer, and administrative pressure from the government was greatly reduced. And also, it prepared Indians to discharge responsibilities in the provincial administration. If we discuss about drawbacks of the Act, irresponsible central government has been we observed. So, no responsible government was envisaged in the Act at the all India level. So, and also this act made a spread of communalism also there. So, the flawed electoral system and limited franchise failed to gain popularity. It promoted sense of communalism in a separate electoral system. So, the introduction of separate electorate system has been made misunderstandings between the Indian people in the name of religion, in the name of minority differences. So, and also it is limited extension of electorates. The electorate was extended to someone, and 500,000 of the central legislature. So, if we discuss in nowadays for a member of parliament constituency, which means around 10 lakhs per constituency population. So, at that time, 500,000 means 5 lakhs for the central legislature, which were the population of India was around 260 million at that time. So, this act we can observe as lack of administrative control also there in this act. So, at the center, the legislative had no control over the Viceroy and Executive Council. And also, here we can observe that the governor enjoyed unrestricted powers. He could also take a decision against the decision of his Council of Ministers. So, he has supreme authority over the entire administration in India. Almost all important matters related to the administration depended on the governor only. Now, we are having same type of system, but in the name of President of India, the central government is implementing every important matters in the name of President of India. But the overall control and overall responsibility is under the control of cabinet ministers only. So, it is acting like responsible for the entire India. So, we can observe that also inappropriate division of subjects are also observed in the 1919 Act. So if we discuss about outcomes of the Act, public reaction is the Congress met in a special session in August 1918. At that, they are making people's awakening about this implementation of the Act, that the Indian National Congress declared that the reforms to be disappointing, and also the reforms which are came from the 1919 Act all are unsatisfactory for the Indian people. And also Indian National Congress demanded effective self-government instead of this 1919 Act. And also the Montague for reforms were termed as unworthy and disappointing, a sunless dawn by the Balagangadhar Tilak. So Anbesant found the reforms as unworthy of England to offer and India to accept. Veteran Congress leaders like Surendranath Banerjee were in favor of accepting the government proposal. So encouraged the struggle of power. As a result of large number of communal riots took place, which continued to increase from 1922 to 1927. So they introduced communal representation, communal electorates, that is made many differences between the many misunderstandings between the people of India. And also in this period, the Swaraj Party was founded in 1923 and won substantial number of seats in the elections except Madras. So whereas in Bombay and also central provinces were successful in blocking the majority of the other supplies with the salaries of ministers. So thus the governors both in the provinces were forced to abolish the diarchy regime. And also at that time, as we discussed in the yesterday's class, Rowlatt Act is there, 1919. So enactment of the Rowlatt Act, while trying to appeal Indians, government of India was already with repression. Throughout the war, repression of nationalists had continued. The terrorists and revolutionaries had been hunted down, hanged and imprisoned. So many other nationalists such as Maulana Abul Kalam Azad also been kept behind bars. So the government now decided to arm itself with more far-reaching powers, which went against the accepted principles of rule of law, to be able to suppress those nationalists who could refuse to be satisfied with the official reforms. In 1919, it passed the Rowlatt Act, even though every single Indian member of the Central Legislative Council opposed it. So this act authorized the government to imprison any person without trial and conviction in court of law. So the act enabled the government to suspend the right of habeas corpus, which had been the foundation of civil liberties in Britain. So from this 1919 Act, we had many salient features are there in the 1919 Act, but they also came up with another important act, that is Government of India Act 1935. So in August 1935, British Parliament passed this Government of India Act 1935, which marked the second milestone towards a fully responsible government of India. It was the longest act enacted by the British Parliament so far, later divided into two parts, that is Government of India Act of 1935 and the Government of Burma Act of 1935. So the original Constitution of India 1950 was by product of the legacy started by the 1935 Government of India Act. More than half of the provisions of the Indian Constitution are identical to or close resemblance to the Government of India Act 1935. So for federal scheme, so we are adopted federal state system at that time. Governors, emergency powers, judiciary, public service commission, and most administrative details, etc., drawn from this 1935 Act only. So we had borrowed many important provisions from this Government of India Act 1935 and kept in our present constitution. So the Government of India Act 1935 is the most profound influence and material source of the Constitution of India. So if we discuss about the background, so since the late 19th century, Indians had increasingly been demanding vital role in the administration of their country. So they had introduced 1919 Act, 1909 Act. These acts are not changed. They wanted to introduce reforms in the Indian administration, but Indians are not satisfied with their reforms. So after the many committees and many representations from the Indian leaders also made many changes in the Indian administration system. So if we discuss about the sources of the Government of India Act 1935, here this act is important for the making of Constitution of India, and also many it's like a mini constitution for present India. So the Government of India Act 1935 was a lengthy and detailed document having 321 sections and 10 schedules. Like sections means like articles. So the 1935 Act had drawn its content from four key sources, which are one was is Simon Commission report, and also that is held in 1927, and also the recommendations of the roundtable conferences, 3 roundtable conferences, and also the white paper published by the British government in 1933 based on the 3rd roundtable conference, and also reports on the joint select committees. So if we discuss about the provisions of the 1935 Act, these important provisions are there. Like first one is establishment of All Indian Federation. So from this Government of India Act 1935 provided the creation of an All Indian Federation consisting of British provinces and also princely states as units. Like we are now calling as India, having with 29 states. Like at that time, the Government of India Act 1935 made All Indian Federation. So the proposed All Indian Federation included 11 governors provinces of British India, 6 chief commissioner provinces, and those princely states who might accede to the federation. So the terms on which a princely state joined the federation were to be laid down in the instrument of accession. So the ruler of each princely state willing to join the federation was to sign an instrument of accession. So however, this federation never came into being as the princely states did not join in. And also this 1935 Act made division of subjects too. As we discussed in the 1919 Act, there are reserved and transferred items there. Like that, here 1935 Act divided the subjects into 3 lists. So these are like one was federal list with 59 items. These 59 items under the control of center only, and second one is provincial list with 54 items. This entire administration belong to the provinces. Like present state government. So concurrent list with 36 items for both center and provinces. So some of residuary powers also there. The complete authority belong to the Governor General of India. Like now we are having same type of this division of provisions, like we have central list, we have state list, we have concurrent list, and also we are having residuary powers that is belong to the central government only. So from this 1935 Act, one important aspect we can observe that is introduction of provincial autonomy. So means this act introduced the system of provincial autonomy in its place. The provinces were allowed to act as autonomous units of administration in their defined spheres. Like we are having in present situation, we are having at the same time we are having central government, and also we are having at the state level governments. So the 1935 Act introduced the responsible governments in provinces. Like we are having every state is having a separate state government. Like we are having Telangana, a state government. We are also responsible at the same time to the central government. So like that 1935 Act introduced responsible governments subject to certain parts. So however, this act does not mean that establishment of full-fledged responsible government in the provinces. So and also this act introduced a diarchy system at center. So the 1935 Act provided for the adoption of diarchy at the center. So like as we discussed division of subjects, here the federal subjects were divided into reserved subject and transferred subjects, as like 1909 and 1919 Act. So in the 1919 Act, the subject matters also divided into reserved and transferred subjects. Here also from 1935 Act, the administration subjects so divided into two parts. Like one was reserved subjects were to be administered by the Governor General with the help of three executive councillors appointed by him. These reserved subjects include religious affairs, defenses, external affairs, taxation, tribal affairs, and power resources, etc. And also transferred subjects were to be administered by the Governor General with his council of ministers. The number of ministers could not exceed 10. So the council had to act in confidence with the legislature. So the transferred subjects include like education, health, forest, local self-governments, etc. So however, this provision of the act did not come into operation at all. So this act also created a principle of communal representation. So further, this 1935 Act extended the principle of communal representation. As we discussed in 1909 Act, 1919 Act, there is separate electorates for Muslims and Hindus and minorities. So further, this act also extended his this representation from the communities. Like Act provided separate electorates for the depressed classes like scheduled caste people and working class, means labor, and also there is separate women electorates also there. So this act also introduced federal legislature. Federal legislature means at that time central legislature has bicameral system, as we discussed. Like in present parliament we are having both houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Like that from 1935 Act, there is in central legislature there are two houses are there. One is upper house called Council of States, and lower house called it as Federal Legislative Assembly. So now we are calling upper house as Rajya Sabha and lower house as Lok Sabha. So the Council of State was to be permanent body with 1/3 of its member retiring every third year. So like that in present time also we are having this system for the Rajya Sabha members, though their tenure is 6 years, and also every 6 years, 1/3 members retiring and 1/3 members re-electing in the replacement of the members. So the Federal Assembly, that is called it as lower house, now it is called it as Lok Sabha, had term of 5 years. So the lower house was to be composed of 375 members, of which 250 members were to be representatives of British India and 125 members were from princely states. Now it is the number of members of this lower house, means Lok Sabha, has been increased to 545 members. Among 545 members, 543 elected from the people in direct election mode, and 2 members were nominated by the President of India. So at that time, from this 1935 Act, there are only 375 members. So, and also the Government of India Act 1935 introduced bicameralism in the provinces. So at that time, in every state also is having 2 houses, like now we are having a Legislative Assembly and Legislative Council. At that time, this 1935 Act introduced bicameralism in provinces. First time in India, in 6 provinces out of 11 provinces. At that time, 11 provinces are there. Out of 11 provinces, 6 provinces has adopted this bicameralism in their provincial legislatures, like the provincial legislatures of Bombay, Madras, Assam, Bengal, Bihar. Legislative were made bicameral, consisting of Legislative Assembly, that is lower house, and a Legislative Council, that is upper house. However, many restrictions were placed on them. So extension of franchise also there, about 10% of the total population getting the right to vote. So from this 1935 Act, it is abolished the Council of India, which is established by the Government of India Act of 1858. The Secretary of State for India was provided with a team of advisor in its place. So this act also established a federal court system in Indian administration. Now we are calling as Supreme Court. So the Government of India Act 1935 provided for the establishment of federal court with original and appellate powers to interpret the 1935 Act and settle the disputes relating the federal matters. So, and also under the provisions of the 1935 Act, the Federal Court of India was set up on the 1st October of 1937 with original, appellate, and advisory jurisdiction. It began its activities from that 1937. So, and also it is introduced public service commissions for the recruitment of civil servants from this 1935 Act, and also it is provided for the setting up provincial public service commission, like now we are having Union Public Service Commission, like at that time they introduced provincial public service commission and joint public service commission for 2 or more provinces. Now we are having for India, we are having for entire India, we are having Union Public Service Commission, and also we are having for state purpose, we are having state public service commissions also there. And also this act introduced establishment of federal bank. So 1935 Government of India Act also provided the establishment of the Reserve Bank of India to control the currency and credit of the country, and also created a federal authority for the railway. So to control the Indian railways, the Government of India Act 1935 set up a new authority called Federal Railway Authority. So, and also reorganization of the provinces are also made from this act, and also emergency powers of Governor General also introduced from this act only. So there are many implications of the Government of India Act 1935 also there. So the proposal of setting of All Indian Federation as visualized in the 1935 Act, and also due to this, the central government continued to be governed in accordance with the Government of India Act 1919, Montecham's for reforms. However, another many other provisions also there from this 1935 Act came into force. So the important aspects are, one is RBI set up in 1935, Federal Court, that is Supreme Court, established in 1935, and also the British government decided to introduce provincial autonomy from 1937. So some defects also there from this 1935 Act. Many Indian national leaders also criticized this act as created many communal violence in the Indian state. So with the implementation of introduction of the communal representation by creation of separate electorates made for the depressed classes, women, and labor. So this is this representation of various interests further promoted separatist tendencies, culminating the partition of India. So this act failed to provide proper federal structure. Moreover, the autonomy introduced at the provincial level was limited and restricted. So the Government of India Act 1935 was condemned by nearly all sections of the Indian opinion and unanimously rejected by the Indian National Congress. So you may so as per the syllabus, we had discussed about these provisions from the 1909 Act and 1919 Act and 1935 Act. So, and also we are having 1947 Indian Independence Act. So Indian Independence Act was based upon the Mountbatten Plan on of 3rd June of 1947 and passed by the British Parliament on July 5, 1947. So if we discuss about these salient features of 1947 Indian Independence Act, there are only some important salient features, like it provided two dominion states, that is India and Pakistan. The boundaries between the two dominion states were to be determined by the Boundary Commission, which was headed by Sir Cyril Radcliffe, and it provided for partition of Punjab and Bengal and separate boundary commissions to demarcate the boundaries between them. And also Pakistan was comprised the West Punjab, East Bengal, territories of the Sindh, Northwest for frontier provinces, and also Assam, Bawalpur, Khairpur, Baluchistan, and 8 other princely states of Baluchistan. The authority of the British Crown over the princely states ceased, and they were free to join either India or Pakistan or remain independent. So both the dominions of India and Pakistan were to have governor generals to be appointed by the British king. So the act also provided for a common governor general if both of them agreed. So the constituent assemblies of both states were free to make constitutions for their respective countries. For the time being, till the constitution was made, both of them would be governed in accordance with the Government of India Act 1935. Any notification or commission could be done by the Governor General. British government would not continue any control on any dominion. So The Governor General was invested with adequate powers until March 1948 to issue orders for effective implementation of the provisions of Indian Independence Act 1947. So, these are the syllabus. So, I am concluding this session. So, you are having next class, right? Thank you for your participation.